Boys, what's good? This is Herm, and we're here today with the first mock draft of this NBA season, at least on my channel anyway. But, we have no NBA games on the schedule tonight due to a break before the in-season tournament quarterfinals. So I thought I'd, just kind of give an update on what I'm thinking of the prospects for next year's draft to this point in the season, because mock drafts have been a big part of my channel. So I thought I would just let you guys know what I'm thinking and just kind of drop my first mock draft of the season and relatively early in. But let's just get into it with number 1 in the Detroit Pistons. So I did the draft order according to standings. I didn't randomize it. I didn't do lottery. It is purely on standings at this point. And with the Pistons, I went with point guard Isaiah Collier out of USC. I think when you're a team like the Pistons, you cannot draft for fit. I know they have Cade and Ivy. They've got some guards there already. But when you've lost 17 straight games, they lost every game in the month of November, you cannot draft for fit. You have to draft for talent. And to me, at this point through the college season, Isaiah Collier has been the best prospect, the most impressive prospect, and exceeded expectations of what people thought he might be. 18 years old, at one point was the number 1 high school prospect. Then there's a bunch of different G League Ignite guys. But the best player in college to me right now, at least for freshmen, is Isaiah Collier, point guard. And the big thing for Detroit is that he can shoot the ball. This doesn't mean the end of the Cade Cunningham era. This just means you get him a player next to him that can also shoot the ball and be a huge part of your team moving forward. Because when you look at this Pistons roster, who's locked in? It's probably Cade, Jalen Duren, and then Ausar Thompson. It seems like Monty Williams is kind of really up and down of whether or not he wants to even play Jaden Ivey at all. A guard is okay fit-wise anyway, and he's also really good, and he can shoot the ball very well. 41% from 3 early on this season, 18 points per game, super impressive for a freshman, 4 assists and 3 rebounds, and you get a new backcourt of Collier and Cade Cunningham moving forward. There are probably some guys that you could argue are better fits, but Collier to me is the pick for Detroit at number 1. Then at number 2 with the San Antonio Spurs, I have them taking another French big man in center/power forward, Alexandre Sarr, currently playing for Perth in the NBL. And I think this is kind of an upgrade on the Zach Collins spot. If you're San Antonio, you're probably looking for a long-term point guard. But since Collier just went off the board, I think the point guard thing is kind of out of the window here. So you take an upgrade on a position that you could be able to get better at in center with Zach Collins, because it seems like they want to play Victor Wembanyama at the power forward moving forward, and that's cool. You can do that, but if you're going to do that, then you need a good center alongside him, and I like the idea of an athletic, very good shot blocking big man in Alex Sarr next to him. They also definitely have played together before in France. And 7'1", you have a front court duo of 7'4" Wemby and 7'1" Sarr. It's going to be very hard to stop that moving forward. A lot of people think he's in the convo for number 1, and I could see that as well. But this is kind of an olive branch to Wemby, saying we want to make you happy, get you another French guy in here, and a positional upgrade at the big man spot. 2 blocks per game in the NBL so far, as well as 11 points and nearly 7 rebounds. Just a reminder, overseas guys usually don't perform as well, so these stats, although they might not wow you initially looking at them, are pretty solid for a young guy in the NBL. At number 3, the Washington Wizards are on the board. Another team where they don't really have anything set in stone, so I don't think you're drafting for fit at all. I think you're drafting for talent, and the most talented player on the board to me is Jacoby Walter, shooting guard out of Baylor. Yes, he plays the same position as Jordan Poole, who has been incredibly inefficient so far this season, and Johnny Davis, who they just drafted a couple years ago, who doesn't seem to work out. But Jacoby Walter is a very high-level scorer and a good shooter. 18 points per game, 43% from 3, and nearly 5 rebounds at 6'5", also not bad. But this is a guy who could be the scoring leader of your franchise moving forward, the offensive cornerstone of your team moving forward. So if you have the option to take this, you do it. That's just what you do. You can even, keep Jordan Poole, and maybe you play one of them at the 3, or you play one of them at the 1 if you want to get really crazy. But Jacoby Walter is a super talented player, really good athlete, young guy, and I just think he makes a lot of sense if you're looking at who can be the face of Wizards basketball moving forward. I think Jacoby Walter could be that, and he's a guy I'd really watch out for rising up to number 1 because he's already risen pretty highly through the process early on. At number 4, it's the Memphis Grizzlies, who probably won't be picking this high when it comes to draft time. After Ja Morant comes back, they improve their record a little bit, but at this point, they have the 4th worst record in the league, and I have them taking small forward Matas Buzelis out of the G League Ignite. They have their scores. They have Ja, they have Desmond Bane, they have Jaren Jackson Jr. What they really need is a complementary wing that they can slide in at the 3 spot and really, kind of tie the team together in somewhat of what Dylan Brooks did, but maybe to a higher extent. And that's what Buzelis can be, because he's not going to be a high-level scorer. He's not going to ask to be some high-level scorer. He's going to play good defense. He's going to pass the ball, and he's going to do a little bit of everything for you. And to me, for a team that's playing like Luke Kennard out there right now, Buzelis is an upgrade and really lanky. 6'11", small forward, 11 points per game in just 1 game in the Ignite. He had his debut the other night. He's been out with injury, but he's an efficient player. He blocks shots, he gets steals, and I think he would be a really good complementary piece for Memphis moving forward. At number 5, we have the Portland Trailblazers, and they have their guards, right? They have Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe. I think you need a forward. I think DeAndre Ayton is probably the center moving forward as well, so they need a wing, a forward, and to me, that is Ron Holland out of the G League Ignite. Started the process probably as the consensus number 1 pick, but I think Collier's been that good. I think the other guys have been impressive. And some of the efficiency stuff with Holland hasn't been great, but he's a very good player nonetheless. 6'7" forward, 15 points per game, very solid in the G League so far. Is one of the more high-level guys we've seen go through the Ignite program in terms of scoring. 6 rebounds. The shooting is a bit of concern, but when you have guys like Simons and, theoretically Sharp and Jeremy Grant, you can kind of survive it, and Ron Holland is a big upside pick here. So you have your Ignite kind of alumni duo going forward of Scoot Henderson and Ron Holland, as well as Shaedon Sharpe. So probably you move off of Simons if you do something like this, and then you have Scoot, Sharpe, Holland. Maybe you keep Grant for next year, and you have DeAndre Ayton, and that's probably your group moving forward. And I think they would be okay with that. And honestly, this isn't a bad outcome for Portland at all. At number 6, I have the Charlotte Hornets taking Stephon Castle, combo guard out of UConn. Has been really good to start the year, and the Hornets to me need a guard to go alongside LaMelo Ball. Terry Rozier not going to be there forever. He's not going to be the guard pairing for LaMelo long term. They have their center in Mark Williams. They have their forward duo probably now in Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges. I think those are the two going forward there. So getting a guard alongside LaMelo feels like the obvious move here. I do like Nick Smith Jr., but Castle definitely is a much higher level prospect coming in. 14.5 points per game so far for UConn. 6.5 rebounds for a 6'6" point guard pretty much is crazy. He does a lot of rebounding and 3.5 assists as well. The shooting isn't great, but at 33%, you have hope that he's not a bad shooter and it can get better. It's not like the 20% we saw from Holland. The 33% is something that you can hopefully kind of push up a little and be okay with that, and it's more likely that he becomes an average shooter than someone like Holland does. At least it appears that way at this point, and I think this is a great thing for them because the Hornets need a guard. They've tried it a couple times. They tried it with Book Knight, even Bryce McGowan's they took a shot at with the kind of guard pairing there, and Terry Rozier, who's been good. He's a good scorer, but he doesn't really fit the timeline of the team overall, so getting a long-term pairing for LaMelo in the backcourt I think makes the most sense out of anything you could do. At number 7, the Chicago Bulls, who basically have no future right now. It feels like they're going to blow it up at the deadline. Probably Levine, DeRozan, Caruso, maybe even Vucevic all get traded this year, and that leaves you with pretty much nothing. And when you have that, you go with upside, and this is an upside swing. Point guard Nikola Topic out of Serbia, and they've needed a point guard for a long time. Haven't really had a solid point guard since D Rose, unless you want to count the half a season from Lonzo Ball and the like 1 or 2 years from Rajon Rondo. I don't really remember what it was. But they haven't had a franchise point guard since Derrick Rose went down with that injury, and Topic could be that because overseas he's been dominant. Nearly 19 points per game for an 18-year-old in a European league is ridiculous. 7 assists per game as well, and he's pretty lanky. Is a floor general. That's what he's going to do. 51% from the field has been efficient, and I really like the idea of him being the guy, the new guy in Chicago, is kind of the, next try at an international guy, because Lauri Markkanen didn't work out in Chicago and then it now is thriving in Utah, but they have a chance to make it up here, and I really like the idea of Topic, and because of his playmaking, he could elevate some of the other guys on a roster that is relatively devoid of talent, especially after some trades that could go down. At number 8, the Utah Jazz are picking here, and I have them taking small forward Zachary Rissacher out of France as well. There's been a few guys out of France now. So Rissacher and Alex Sarr are both from France. A lot of good young French players now coming into the league. His stats don't wow me as much. I've seen ESPN had him as high as he was either second or third. They had him top 3. I felt like that was a little rich for me at this point for a guy who's not proven as a shooter, is a decent scorer, and is just kind of like a complimentary piece at this point. He's like kind of well known to have very high upside. A lot of people really like what he could end up being, but it's all flashes at this point. So having him higher than 8 to me feels like a little much, but I do like him enough to keep him in the top 10. And I think the Jazz need a wing. They have Lowry and Kessler as their 4 and 5 or 3 and 5, but they need a forward, whichever way you want to kind of lay it out. They have Keontae George, I think, is their point guard moving forward, and getting another wing I think could really help them be better sooner rather than later. For the Trailblazers, again, this is the Warriors pick. The Warriors owe it to Portland through a couple trades. It actually went to Memphis initially, then in the Smart deal went to Boston, and then in the Drew Holiday deal went to Portland. It's been moved a bunch, especially recently, but they still need another forward. Especially because Jeremy Grant, probably a trade piece as well. So they get Holland, and then they get his Ignite teammate here in Azan Almansa. Also, with the Ignite program. 6'10", big power forward. 9 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. Is just a solid all-around player. I don't think he has the same upside as a guy like Holland does. Once we get out of the top 7 or 8 in this draft, I think it's not super solid. And it's well known that this draft isn't one of the better ones in years, but there is still some talent and could be rotational guys at this point. I don't think Almanza would start as a rookie. I think that feels unlikely, but they could develop him off the bench. At number 10, I have the San Antonio Spurs. This is the Raptors pick that they are owed. I think they got it in the Pirtle deal, but I have them taking a point guard, DJ Wagner out of Kentucky. 18 years old, 6'4", has really impressed so far this season, and if people had told you he might go before his teammate Justin Edwards, I think you would have gotten laughed at, and they would have said that there's no way that happened, but I think it might, because the Spurs, again, need a point guard. Trey Jones is solid, but is probably a backup. In the Jeremy Sochan experiment, although I've said it might work, I don't think long-term he's a primary ball handler. Probably Sochan is a secondary ball handler in his career. So getting a real point guard in there could be very beneficial to all the guys that are currently on the team. So I kind of went back and forth here. It could be Tyrese Proctor out of Duke, but I'm going to take Wagner out of Kentucky instead. Kentucky guards have a long history of panning out very well in the NBA. So if you want kind of a surefire guy, take a Kentucky guard. It works out most of the time. 14.5 points per game, really solid for a freshman as well. The shooting isn't great, which concerns you on a roster that already has shooting problems. Wemby, despite being touted as a shooter, isn't great efficiency-wise. Sochan, not a great shooter, and the other guys are kind of hit or miss. So that would be the big worry here, but the scoring is there. The passing is okay. And I think they need a point guard, and I like Wagner for them because he is a more of an upside guy in long term. The Thunder had this pick via the Rockets, and I have them taking center Donovan Clingan. I know they have Chet Holmgren at center, but their center rotation outside of that, not a whole lot going on. You got Jalen Williams, the other one, who isn't really a traditional center, and you have there's some guy they got via trade. Davis Bertans is in Oklahoma City, but not a ton of big men there. And if you decide you want to play Chet Holmgren kind of together with Klingon, you could do that as well. You could play Klingon as a backup, and I think him and Chet could play together at times. But he's great. He's a monster as well. This dude is enormous. You would have 2 7'2" guys in your front court, and that would be extremely dangerous. You know, the Thunder love length. They love guys with big wingspans, just tall players in general, and I think Klingon fits the mold of what they like. They have a ton of guards, so really they need wings and they need front court depth. 15 points per game so far for Klingon this season, on top of 6 rebounds and 64% from the field. He's not going to space the floor. That's not what he's going to do, but Chet can space the floor. And I think Klingon provides you more of a traditional roll man and a shot blocker. Good luck getting shots off in the paint against Klingon and Chet Holmgren. It's just not going to happen. And I thought this picture was great. Him next to Jordan Hawkins, who's a really good rookie this year, but he makes Hawkins look small. Hawkins is not a small player. He's not a tiny guard. He is a wing, a like 6'5", 6'6" wing, and Klingon makes him look tiny. And Klingon, unlike Chet, isn't a super skinny big man. He's a little more built out, and I think the two of them together could be really unique for OKC. At number 12, the Hawks are selecting. I have them taking Justin Edwards. I mentioned him earlier, was touted as the top Kentucky guy coming in this year, and a lot of people thought he could be a top 5 pick, but early on, he just hasn't been quite that level of player that you might have expected, but I still think he can pick it up, and I think he's a high-level talent, so to me, he's still easily a lottery selection. 19 years old, 6'8", 10 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, and, you know, not great efficiency, but not to a point where you're super concerned about it either. The Hawks have their big man. They have Capella and Okongwu. They have their guards in Trey and DeJounte Murray, and then they have a forward in Jalen Johnson. But I would say DeAndre Hunter is still somewhat up in the air, so getting another forward that you could slide in there, I think, would be the move if you are Atlanta. At number 13, the Thunder are picking again, this one via the Clippers. Neither of these have been their own pick, but picks that they have from everyone else. That's the benefit of the treasure trove of assets that they built up over the years. And the Thunder, I have them taking Jalen Williams, J-Dub, his younger brother Cody Williams, currently playing for Colorado, and is really good. Unlike J-Dub, who was, went to Santa Clara, had to build up his draft stock. Cody Williams went in touted, partly because of how good his brother was already in the NBA, but also because of how good Cody is himself. Really impressive as a freshman so far, and the great thing is that he is a sniper, 43% from 3, 11 points per game. I've liked what I've seen from him at Colorado so far. He's not like their lead guy or anything, but he's still very solid, and I think putting him as kind of a depth wing on OKC would be great as like your 6th, 7th, 8th man, and could be really like an impact player for them sooner rather than later. And if you bring him off the bench with Isaiah Joe, with Kayson Wallace, I'm starting to really like this Thunder team, and I already liked it before. At number 14, the Houston Rockets have this pick via Brooklyn, and I have them taking a center, Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. They have Alperen Sengun, one of the best centers in the league already. At only 21 years old, I believe, Sengun is phenomenal. He's been great for them this year. But Filipowski, I think, makes sense because they don't have any depth at big man. When you look at their backup bigs, it is Jock Landale, it's Boban Marjanovic, and then it's Jeff Green as kind of a small ball 5, but they don't really have a true backup 5. So getting Filipowski in here as your backup to Sengun provides a little bit different kind of change of pace and a different style of big than Sengun, who's, a playmaking kind of lead ball guy, whereas Filipowski is a traditional big man, bruiser in the post, 19 points per game at Duke this year, and 2 blocks per game. Really physical player, and I think it makes more sense in like a traditional pick and roll, like with a guy like Fred VanVleet or even Amen Thompson. And Filipowski, I think, would be a great kind of long-term investment as a backup for the Houston Rockets. And then we are now finished with the lottery, and I want to touch on the rest of the guys, but we're going to do it in a little bit lesser detail. Because it's early on, I'm not super versed in all these players to this point, so I don't want to go super in depth on all of them if I haven't. watched a ton of film yet, but I could fill out a first round, so we'll look at the rest of the first. The Bucks have the 15th pick. For a team of their caliber, very abnormal, and I'm sure they're happy to have it. They need defense. They really need guard defenders, but they need defense overall. So I have them going with Bobby Clintman, former Wake Forest player, a kind of tall, lanky power forward that makes sense if you're looking for defense first. The Cavs, I've been taking point guard Tyrese Proctor. Could go in the lottery for sure, but they need a backup after Ricky Rubio left. They haven't really replaced him with their backup point guard spot. I like Craig Porter, but I still think you could use another backup guard. I have the Heat taking Reed Shepherd out of Kentucky. I believe is in the back here behind Rob Dillingham. But Shepherd been very good so far this season and shoots the ball well, something that the Heat need. And again, Kentucky guards hit. Take Kentucky guards. The Pacers, a team that needs defense. I have them taking Ryan Dunn, a junior out of Virginia. I think he's a junior. Maybe he's a sophomore. But he's averaging like 3 blocks per game so far this season. He's been a monster in terms of a rim protector and a shot blocker. So getting him in there as a forward who can block shots like that, I think it'd really help one of the worst defensive teams in the league. The Pelicans have the 19th pick. They still need more point guard help. CJ McCollum is their point guard now. Not a true point guard. Dyson Daniels plays a lot of point for them. So getting a more traditional point guard in Trey Alexander, I think would be a good selection for them. I have the Knicks taking Kevin McCullough out of Kansas, a experienced guy ready to play right away, and they can plug him into their rotation early on. Seems like a Tibbs kind of guy, very similar to Quentin Grimes, where he's going to love what he does in the court and play him early on. With the Suns, I have them taking Rob Dillingham, guard out of Kentucky. Everybody knows him from the Overtime Elite, one of the most fun players to watch in the country. And because they have Kevin Durant, because they have Booker, I know they're going to love guys with swag like this, guys who are just ballers, and they're going to advocate for them to take someone like this. Kevin Durant, known to be very close with Emoni Bates, and I think Rob Dillingham could give you a similar vibe to that in a point guard sense. The Hawks taking Jared McCain. They did take Kobe Bufkin this year, but still they need backup guard help, so I took McCain out of Duke. The Knicks, I've taken Aaron Bradshaw, a power forward who hasn't played for Kentucky this year, but is a very good athlete. Not quite the redshirt level of Shaedon Sharpe, who you knew was a star. I wouldn't say Bradshaw is a lock to be that level of player, but very good regardless, and they need a backup for after trading Obi Toppin. The Sixers, I've taken Yves Missy out of Baylor. Montrezl Harrell hurt. They're playing Mo Bamba backup center minutes. They need a backup 5. The Nuggets, I've taken Dylan Jones, a shooting guard out of Weber State, which I believe is Damian Lillard's college as well, but not a lot of drafted players come out of there, but they like experience, they like scores, they like good shooting guards, and I think Dylan Jones would be a cool pick for the Nuggets. The Pacers taking Mark Mitchell, small forward out of Duke, more defense. Bucks taking Baba Miller out of Florida State is kind of more of a developmental project, but could be cool for them. It worked out with Giannis. I don't think Baba's going to be that level of player, but he could turn into a more high-level player than people expect. I have the Magic taking Alex Caravan out of UConn, winning player for a young team that is, getting into more of a playoff ritual. Like, they're going to be a playoff team year in year out from this point, I believe. So getting more winning players makes sense. For the Celtics, I have them taking center Kel'el Ware, maybe a replacement for Al Horford long term, who is in the twilight of his career. They're going to need center depth once he gets out of there because Luke Cornett not gonna cut it. So Kel'el Ware is a pick for me there. And then for the Timberwolves, I have them taking freshman point guard Carlton Carrington out of Pittsburgh, who put up a triple-double in his debut and has been phenomenal for Pitt early on. He's a guy to watch heavily. He could very, very quickly skyrocket up the board and is a player to keep a very clear eye on because I think he's going to be taken much higher than people thought initially. Wasn't really on a lot of people's radar, but is going to be from here on out. And that'll do it for this mock draft, the first mock draft of 2024. And I appreciate you for watching. Usually I do daily recaps. So if you're interested in a short, condensed 10-minute recap of every night of NBA hoops, think about sticking around, watching that, subscribing to the channel. I'm almost at 12,000 subscribers. So if you enjoy the content, again, think about sticking around. But thanks for watching. That's going to be it for me here. So have a good one. I'm Herm. Peace.